Welcome to the Inviting Shift podcast. I'm your host, Christina Smith, and each week I'll be bringing together my favorite experts, coaches, clients, and friends to discuss how we navigate midlife and all of the transitions within it. So whether you're in the mood for a lighthearted conversation about menopause, seeking inspiration to find your next passion or purpose, or just want to create deeper connection with yourself or others, this is the place to be. Share these conversations with your friends. And if you're navigating midlife solo, come connect with us, join us, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And we will show you how the second half can be even better than the first half. On to this week's circle. Welcome back. This week we are talking about relationships, and I'm very excited about this conversation because I really could use it this week as I was looking through my notes and bringing up some thoughts about what I might speak about, what we might speak about. I was just like, these are the things that you would give your clients. Exactly what you need, Christina. How peculiar that always seems to happen magically and some kind of synchronicity. Anyway, I have with me Amy Stone and Hannah Blackburn, and we are going to talk about relationships and midlife and how relationships shift. I think that I know I had this dream that I would have girlfriends from like my teen years and then have them forever. And it's like, I can't even. Some people are very lucky to have childhood friends. My husband has a whole group of them. I do not have any of those friends. Our lives changed. And so that just shows how relationships can change, and it doesn't have to be bad. It just is, the changing thing. So without any further ado, let's just introduce our guests and have them introduce themselves. Hey, Amy, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm so happy that you're here. Yay. All right. My name is Amy Stone. I live in sunny Miami, Florida, which is not so sunny today. And what I do these days is I am a transformational life coach for step parents and adults in blended families. Really, basically any adult who has a family and is looking for more pleasure and joy and less stress. Right. So what does that mean? What do I do? How did I get there? I have a bunch of kids. I have 2 stepkids. I was a stepmom before I was a mom. You talk about relationships, which we can talk more about that. I went into that situation with all of the optimism and positivity and naivete that you can do as a 27-year-old person. I thought I was nice. They were nice. What could possibly go wrong? And then to make that situation even easier, I very quickly added 2 more kids. Love kids, love family. Gotta say, they never, ever, ever simplify anything is my master advice there. They don't make anything easier and simpler. And so I'm excited to have this conversation. Today, I very much fall into that category of midlife, right smack in the middle. Proudly Gen X and trying to reconcile the reality that my favorite songs are now being played at the grocery store.
Classic. They're on classic radio now. I heard it the other day. I was like, this is classic radio. And it was like Billy Idol. And I was like, classic.
Am I classic? I'll go with that. I'm classic. We're now classic. There we go.
Officially, yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Amy. And Hannah, welcome to the Inviting Shift podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about you and what it is that you do.
So my name is Hannah. I live in London and I am a transformational somatic coach. So that means I help people regulate their nervous systems and achieve goals that they believe that they can't achieve by shifting fears, blocks, doubts, essentially anything that's held and stored in our systems. So it could be trauma, it could just be old belief systems, it could be ancestral, it could be, wherever we picked up all these beliefs from. And so, yeah, I help people shift the stuff that's in the way, essentially helping people get out of their own way so that they can really attract and create the life that they desire. Because I think there's a lot of people out there who do not believe that they can have what they want. And I believe that anyone can have exactly what they want. There's just a method and the tools, I suppose, to get there that are needed. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love that so much because we were even talking about this before we started recording about how I get clients that come to me and go, what's the point of working on relationships, Christina, if I can't get the other person to go to therapy with me, or I can't get the other person to do what I think that they should be doing, right? And it's like, you would be surprised how much one person can impact a relationship, because if you're in this weird like do loop of getting angry and in a bad space, or you have the same argument over again, if somebody breaks that cycle, the other person has to respond differently, because, go ahead, keep yelling, but I'm going to walk away. Well, that person's not going to keep yelling, right? We're going to have to find a new way to communicate if I'm going to walk away. And every time you're yelling and you yell a lot. So, I mean, we can make a huge difference. I think what it comes down to for me, and I don't want to go into this too deep because I want to talk about why relationships change, but they're hard. I think we expect them to be easy all the time, and that we're just going to show up and, like it should be happily ever after. Isn't that what happens? You meet the Prince Charming, you marry them, and things are just smooth. Kind of, Amy, like you were saying in your intro, like, of course, we're all nice people. We can get along. Like, doesn't that make a family?
Well, right. That's where the movie ends,
Yeah,
right? The movie
right.
ends with happily ever after. Like, nobody gave us the book that's like, what does it take to make that happen? And one of the crazy things that I think about a lot now, looking back over several decades, is that surprise, right? That surprise that it was like, well, I thought this was supposed to be easy. And I actually thought that being a child was the piece that maybe trained me to be a parent, which doesn't turn out to be true in my experience. They're two different experiences, right? Being a kid trained me to be a kid. Being a parent is how I learned to be a parent. Being a step parent is how I learned to be a step parent. And that has been a crazy, crazy realization for me. I have these, I call them the moments where you look for an adultier adult, where you find yourself in a situation where somebody expects you to do something like, fix the plumbing, like deal with a clogged toilet, a leak, continue to do the laundry. And you're just like, how am I the person who's in charge of this? And you like look over your shoulder, like, shouldn't there be somebody else that I can, where's the adultier adult to tell me how to do this?
Fortunately, that is your circus and those are your monkeys.
It's the most painful realization in the middle of the night. It's like, wow, my circus, my monkeys.
Yeah, and it's lovely too. I'm sure
It is.
of
No.
course, lots of beautiful moments. We're not taking that away, but that's what we mean. Like, even like, oh, when we were young, we were like, oh, well, I know exactly how I'm going to parent, and I'm going to do it perfectly, and this is what my parents are doing wrong, and I'm never going to do any of those things or say any of those things or make my kid feel this way. And it was like, yeah, right.
Well, one of the, I don't know if you experienced this, Christina or Hannah, but one of the craziest things that I have realized as an adult is when I was a teenager, I thought I was delightful. You guys, I thought I was delightful. And then being in a situation where I'm living with other small people, I have come to this stunning, I watch them do things that I myself did as a child. And I think to myself, not at all fucking delightful. I'm so sorry. I just cursed on your show.
All right.
But it's like I see them do it and I was like, oh, I don't think I was maybe as delightful to live with as I thought I was. I was delightful to my friends, but I'm pretty sure that my parents and my aunts and uncles and grandparents were like, wow, we are looking forward to this person growing up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. We call them the huff and puff years with my stepdaughter.
Yeah.
Huff and puff years. Yeah. Those were challenging.
They are. They are. And like you were saying before, it takes two people to tango, right? Or it takes two soldiers to have a war, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you do have a lot of control of how you experience it, right? So you were saying if you walk out of the room, it makes it harder. People yell at you. And one of the things I've learned is the other part of it, which is like sometimes you learn not to walk into the room, right? It's like, oh, if this person's not willing to meet me where I am, then the shift that I can make is how much I'm willing to put myself in the firing line. And I think Hannah was talking about that a little bit before we got on the thing. It's like it changes how we want to see our life, changes how we allow other people to interact with us.
Yeah, exactly. And I obviously you guys are talking about this like on the behavioral level, because that's like the obvious side of things. And then there's the like energetic side of things, like when we start to change how we feel about our own sense of self-worth. And I think that's really interesting as well, like the way that relationships mirror back to us, our sense of self. Ultimately, like if the stronger we feel in ourselves, the more able we are to set boundaries. And I think it's really interesting that how people react to boundaries when they're not so spoken, let's say, that when they're not so overt, when the boundaries are more so, this is what I'm going to tolerate. Just as you said, actually, Amy, it's more like, I'm going to choose not to enter the room. That's kind of an energetic boundary. That's kind of like, I don't even need to tell you, but I'm just going to allow you to feel where I'm at with this. And I think that's really powerful as well, right? That kind of, yeah, showing people how you want to be treated. I think it's super powerful.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, when I think about it, like there are certain people, they don't have to tell you your boundaries. You just kind of behave around them. You know what I mean? We kind of respect that just because we can feel that. And then there's people who we do have to set the boundary with, and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with that. It's really easy for me to be like, hey, I think I just set a boundary the other day with my husband, but it was spoken. It was like, hey, when I'm in my workspace and you come in, you're like emoting stuff. Could you just give me a warning? Like, I would love a warning. If not, I might have to stop you and take a breath or something, because my brain is here, and that is really hard for me to do. That I'm not really a good switcher. I have to, like, I need a moment and a breath. And so just having those boundaries, and my husband's really good. We're really good at hearing each other and doing our best, right? We don't always
Absolutely.
succeed, but doing our best. But boundaries are something that we don't like to speak. And even before that, how about like one of the biggest tips I have for people, and it sounds so ridiculously simple, is asking for what you want is really important. And I know this is kind of flipping over, but I think so often we like miss so much communication, or we have to have so much communication and, miscommunication just because we're not asking for what we want. We go about it in
Right.
different ways, right, Amy?
Yeah. Well, and I will say from my perspective, like I'm not a somatic specialist, but
Mm.
establishing or reestablishing the connection between my body experience, my like somatic experience of living, and you learning to use that as cues to figure out like what do I want and
Oof.
what is important to me. And also you can maybe what do I not want? Like, oh my gosh, my body is reacting to this in a physical sense. And what does that mean? And trusting, creating the safety and security, like the skills to create for yourself the safety and security to be able to speak up for that, and to lean into it. And the other side of that, which is, often more urgent, is learning that transition from children give that responsibility to the adults in their life. It's the adult's responsibility to create safety for a child. Then you magically become an adult. And if you don't figure it out, you will still give that authority and the power to the other people in your life. And you may not realize, but you will give your boss and your boyfriend and your, the homeless guy on the corner, you just automatically assume that they are in charge of creating safety for you, which makes
Mm.
it very hard to ask for what you want. Right. And then trusting yourself and saying, no, it's okay for me to stand up and say, I actually don't like it when you walk into my office, or, hey, I don't want to talk about politics with you. It upsets me. Or, by the way, this meal that you make every Thursday night, I think is disgusting. That one probably doesn't go over as well in a family as the others, but like that process and seeing, putting it all together, it's complex and the cues are confusing.
Yeah. What I loved what you said about that was, I remember one time I walked into my husband's office while I was talking to him, and I was just like, hey, you don't spend enough time with me, and blah, 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 blah. I was feeling really small in that moment, I'm sure, and unimportant, and all of these other things. And I just like, and he's like, what is it that you want around this, though? And I was like,
What do I
I
want?
want you to make me feel loved. Like, and he's like, yeah, and how can I do that? And it's like, Right. So what is it
It's
that you
like,
can
I
actually, what am I
want,
asking for? And it took
yeah,
me a while to be like, actually, I want one night a week where there's no phones, no other appointments. It's just us. And we don't have to do anything fancy, but just that we have dedicated time for each other and it's just connection time. That was that was an easy ask. I mean, it wasn't easy at first because my husband was a really busy man. So for him to tell people once a week that he wasn't going to have any calls, any meetings, nothing was a lot for him. But at the same time, like getting me to the point of like past that emotional barrier. I guess that's part of the energetic, right? Of like the somatic healing is like trying to pull what is this underneath all this emotion? What is it that I actually want and need? Because let me tell you, it was a lot easier when I could just be like, here's exactly what I need. And then he could be like, yes or no, and not just be like, oh, I'll try to make you happy. I mean, that's just a ridiculous request when you don't know if that person doesn't know what they want and they can't ask for it. And I always get from
yes.
women, but they should know.
I will admit, I have not ever found that the people in my family can read my mind. I wish they could, but I have never found that. And the other thing to dovetail into the theme of this podcast, Christina, is that I think that that changes. Like what I wanted from my partners when I was in my 20s was completely different to when we had a bunch of small children. And now that I'm looking at empty nest, it's totally different, right? It was like when I was in the chaos of small children, I wanted, quiet time, at home and, or maybe girlfriend time. And you can get caught in the ruts, right? Like you can do the same thing over and over again for years. And you have to rethink it and be like, why does this no longer make me happy?
Mm, I love that. Yeah, because it does change. It doesn't mean that we didn't know. It just means that whatever we had before doesn't fit. Hannah, how are you feeling about this? You're like on the younger side of the midlife, so I'm curious of your, thoughts about this and the energy.
No, listening to you both, I have so much to say on this. Like, I love the topic of boundaries. I find it so interesting. And just off the back of both of what you were saying about feeling into the yes, feeling into the no, this is something that I've been doing quite a lot with myself recently, actually, as well as clients. It's that because I think when we think of boundaries, a lot of the time we think of, well, what don't we want? Is that there's that real sense of like, right, I'm going to tell you how I feel and this is what I'm not accepting. But sometimes we forget to feel into what the yes is, like what we're a yes to. And I think they're both as important as each other. So I think just feeling into both of that, like how is the body reacting to the no, the yes, and also how is it reacting when we say no? Because a lot of the time we don't give ourselves permission to say no because there's these fears around, well, if I say no, then I'm going to lose this person. If I say no, like all these kind of stories that we create about it. So it's been really interesting for me on my own personal journey because I think for the most part of my life, I mean, I'm 31 years old, I would say for most of my 20s, and I know most of relationships in our 20s are a bit of a shit show, but I just feel like my 20s, I never was able to ask for what I needed and for what I wanted, but I never knew that was the case, until doing that work. I just understood that that's how relationships went, that I just had to repress and I just had to kind of accept if something didn't feel right. But I think back then I was maybe so numb and disassociated I didn't even realize that was the case. So having done this work, it's really interesting to notice how my relationships have started to shift as I've started to find my yes, find my no. I'm still not there yet. Like I still haven't quite met the emotionally available man. I still keep attracting these men who are not available to my needs. And so it's just showing me, okay, well, I've still got work to do there. I've still got work to do because maybe I'm not so certain about my yes or my no as I thought I was. So it's just using these relationships to show me and show us like where we're at in terms of our development in a long
I
way.
think that's really, I think that's a really grown up description of what you're going through. Like, so my experience in my 20s to 30s was a little bit different. In my 20s, I was really able to pretty much solve things by myself. I was like, I got this. Like, I didn't find myself saying yes or no to things because it really didn't matter. I was like, yeah, I can do this. Like, this is not a problem. And then when I jumped into a family, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot do all of this. All of a sudden it was very impossible. And I had never practiced that, like getting support and asking for help and all of those things. And it was like a 2x4 to the head.
My 20s, I just put a question up in my Facebook group that was like, what would you have called your 20s if it was a book? And mine was like, Cringe, the red flag collector. Like, I definitely was not listening to my body, the yes or a no. I mean, I even got really physically ill in my 30s because I had not listened to my body. And in the meantime, I'm getting into these relationships that I had no business being in whatsoever. And because I didn't listen to my body, and it really took me, even though I got sick in my 30s and started healing that, it really took me into my 40s before I was able to really feel that yes or no. And now, like, I set intentional words with my clients. So if it doesn't feel like this, whether that's a relationship, a situation, or whatever, then it's probably not for me or aligned with me. And I think that that's where you're going, Hannah, right? Like starting to like really get to what is the energy I want to be aligned with.
Yeah, and there's actually a point that I've just realized that I kind of want to mention, because we were talking before about this idea of safety, like sourcing safety. And I think for some people listening, they might be like, well, what the hell does that even mean? And I think it's also a point to note that what feels safe to some people is just what's familiar, or to all of us, right? It's just what's familiar. So for me, I've always attracted relationships that have never served me, that have never, they've been nice in the beginning, but that they haven't really nourished me, and I've never really got what I needed from it, but they felt safe at the time. And so I suppose the point is like, how can we, if we are attracting these relationships, what in us is creating that? Like, what is that familiarity that we're attracting and sometimes like addicted to, I suppose, if you've got an anxious attachment style like me. So I'm addicted to that kind of chase, and I can now be so aware of it. I probably will still have that addiction until it's cleared. And when I say addiction, it's my nervous system is just attracted to that type of person. But yeah, I just think it's an interesting point to make, because it's like the safety kind of has to be cultivated if it's not there. And I guess for a lot of us it isn't, is it? Like, we've all had pieces missing, like both of you were saying before. There's no such thing as perfect parenting. We're always going to miss something. There's going to be a little bit of trauma somewhere for the children, but we just can't help it, can we? Like, it's just life. So yeah
I think that's I think that's like a whole masterclass, like in picking out your, like digging into your origin story and figuring out what are the things that you don't actually want to, what are the things that feel familiar that we misidentify as the safety we want as adults, right? Because sometimes it is safety, right? We want to repeat that friendly, fun thing that we had as a kid. And on other times it's things that we don't, but we don't realize it because we didn't identify the discomfort, or we weren't taught, or we weren't supported in it. And there's levels of that, right? Like there's like things that are not really a big deal, and then there's like honest abuse and people who are, Stockholm syndrome, right? And so there's all kind of things in there. And then so there's identifying it, becoming aware of the pattern, and the awareness that, oh, you know what? Even though I really, really like this chocolate ice cream, if I eat the whole container, I will feel like crap. So it's like picking it up and then going through and trying to reestablish other things to get what we think we want. And that, the next phase, I think, Hannah, is like when you figure out what you think you want, it feels the opposite of safe. It feels like you were jumping off a cliff or at the top of a roller coaster hill. Like you're like, all right, so what I think I want is this wonderful relationship with this person. But then when it shows up in front, if it's something you've never had before, it feels the opposite of secure. It's like, danger, danger, Will Robinson, danger.
Yeah, I had I had limited interpersonal skills when I met my husband, I think. And I knew that he was the kind of man I wanted to be with. This is my second husband. But I knew the kind of man that I wanted to be with. But when I was with that, it was like, oh, so he's just going to hold boundaries and I'm going to have to figure this out. Like, I'm going to have to do my own work. I'm going to have to, like, if I want to be with somebody, I think this tails off of what Hannah was saying is like, our energy will shift and then we'll attract different people. And I think that that is so relatable, especially in midlife, because a lot of us, shift friends. I had a couple of friends where I'm just not friends with them in the last year, even though we were like really, really close before that. And I think as we shift, we don't need to feel bad about like Amy was saying, not even going into the room anymore, not picking up the phone or not texting all the time, right? We don't really have to feel bad about that. That's just energy that is no longer in alignment with what it is that we need. And I mean, I'm not saying that we can do this with every relationship. Obviously, there could be different boundaries. I have boundaries with my mom. Like, I talk to her several times a year, and that's where our relationship lives because that's what feels good to both of us. If we wanted anything else, we would ask for it. But that's what feels safe for us in that relationship. So I think that relationships can change. And I know this is true. And I hope it's true because I want to build more relationships and more connections. And I don't know, has your experience been with like friendships?
I think that's a fascinating topic right now because I am personally in a spot where my friend group is probably in a place to change. Like, so for the last 25 years, I've been connected to various parent school groups through my kids, right? And that is like a constant fire hose of opportunities to connect with people who are parents of same age children, right? I'm about to be an empty nester. And if you like, Hannah has not lived through this yet, but you don't always have actually a lot of stuff in common with the other parents in the school groups. Like, your only connection is that your kids are in the same school. But it's like now I have the opportunity to reinvent and shift things, and I don't even know what these people are going to do. Like, I hope to travel and do these fun things, and like it's going to shift. It's going to totally shift. Some people are going to do completely different things. And I actually am very excited about it. A lot of people who are in the same spot of me are like feeling anxiety and trepidation because they feel safe and comfortable in the parent bubble, the school parent bubble, and which is good, right? That's where they are. I think that one of the classic examples of that sensation. So Martha Beck describes this as the empty elevator when you're transitioning and the people around you are not. So like you're in a full elevator, but then it empties out because people step out and then you're in it by yourself and you've got to figure out how to fill it back up. And so I think that's kind of a fun visual, but it's something that we always go through. One of the big places that people go through this is if they change habits from something that was destructive, and then they need to change their circle to support their healthy habits, right? The other one that people see, and Hannah might be seeing this in her age group, is when we partner up, some people break off and have families, and they don't socialize anymore with people who don't have children, right? Like, or as much. It's that weird, you go through that age period where you're going to 50 weddings a year, you're broke because all you have to do is buy wedding presents. And then some people have families and kids and other people don't, and they don't do the same things. Like, your single friends call you and they're like, hey, let's go to the Bahamas for the weekend. And you're like, I have little people. I am not available.
Yeah, so it changes when we have children often, and then it also can change when we no longer have children. And that's where like women tend to struggle because they're like, now that I'm an empty nester, how do I meet new friends? And it's like, you actually have to go out and be social.
I know. You have to people with the people. You have to do the peopling to meet the people. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting what both of you are saying, actually, because I feel like I'm at that age where some of my friends are married and some of them have kids, but very few. Like, I feel very fortunate, actually, that a lot of my friends are probably quite far off having kids, and I have quite a few single friends, I would say, which is quite nice. I feel like I'll be entering that period at some point, maybe in the next few years. But it's so interesting that we're having this conversation because I was literally just thinking about this before the call. And I didn't get panicky about it, but I had this moment of like, oh God, like I can feel that certain friendships are starting to change, and certain people are like, our relationships are not the same. And there was just this kind of like genuine fear actually that came up of like, shit, like I might lose some of my really close friends here, and I hope that to not be the case. And I guess it would relationships will naturally shift, but there was like a genuine fear there of like, I can sense that things are changing, and it's that like fear of change, isn't it? But also like not wanting to lose those friendships. And I don't think I will have to, but I suppose it's one of those things where some people will naturally just leave from my life, and I'll attract other people who are more on that same vibration. So it's that kind of coming into acceptance of letting go of what was. I guess I'm in a weird transition. I think I'm in a weird transition where I think I'm having loads of breakthroughs, and I can feel myself really about to have a quantum leap. And when you can just feel, I don't know if either of you can relate, I feel like I'm on the cusp of big changes and maybe some big shifts. And it's kind of scary, actually.
But it's the unknown, right? The unknown is always a little scary, I think. Oh no, I think we lost Amy to a storm. But we'll keep talking, see if she can pop back. I was just thinking, as you both were talking, where's my mouse? I was thinking about what's really, yeah, she's back. What I really loved about that was, so we talk about these friends that you have to leave behind, but what's been really lovely for me is as I've been on my growth journey, I was working really closely with an organization called Woman Within, and I developed new relationships with women who really inspire me. Like I remember sitting on the board going, wow, these women are so cool. And half of them are my friends. So I don't want it to be like doom and gloom for midlife. I want us to remember that there are a lot of really awesome relations. There's a lot of people that will get on the elevator, right, Amy?
That's right.
Like, we have to find them in the right places, and we want to not just jump into safety, but you grow a relationship is what I've learned over, the last 10 or 15 years. I didn't have really great relationships when I was young because we moved so often. But like, I've learned you grow the safety. There's friends that I was only like acquaintances with for like 8 years. Then all of a sudden we hung out more and I trusted them more and we did more things together. And it was like, so I feel like even though I've had to let go of some relationships that hurt, I have stepped into a ton that feel really good. They feel inspiring. They feel really collaborative and like supporting each other and, really pushing each other. I have great coaching friends. I feel really, really blessed. And with that being said, a lot of that was because I chose that. I went and had women's circles. I went and was social. When there wasn't what I wanted in an area that I moved to, I created it so that I could meet more women. Like, so I have incredible relationships.
And I think that you deserve a gold star for doing the work to create what you wanted, because that is a lot easier to say than it is to do. Like, it really takes courage, right? It's like, all right, this is what I want. And then you have that like middle school cafeteria moment where you're like, is anybody going to come? Like, are people going to, like, am I going to be the only person who comes to my circle? It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I think that what I want to sort of give you credit for and show you as an example of a transformation is that you are the example of creating the community that you wanted. You are the example that it can work, that the risk is worth the reward, that it's scary at the beginning and it's hard work, but that when listening to you talk about these amazing relationships that you've created is like, awesome.
And it did take work. I just want everybody to know, like, it's not like I was like, I hosted one event and suddenly I had best friends. Like the friends that I have are from all over the place. And but we also do the work of like, hey, we have a date, each one of my friends, because I'm so nomadic, we have a date every month that we're going to meet on that night. If we don't meet on that, I mean, we can always renegotiate it, but it's set on the calendar so that we are ensure that we are connected every month, and we have great conversations. And so, yeah, it's really, again, no easy happily ever after. You kind of have to create your happily ever after.
Yeah, totally. I think I've definitely started to create those kind of friends. I think coaching friends are like the best kind of friends because you just get each other on a different kind of level, don't you? Especially when they're going into this like deep transformational work. I think it's for me, it's like that, and it's probably the age group that I'm in as well. It's that kind of when things start to shift, like when people start to get into serious relationships or when people start to have children, especially like my best friends, and I'm the single one. So that of course there's kind of those thought, there's natural thoughts of like things are starting to change and I'm starting to change. So it's that kind of transition period where I absolutely trust life and I know I have the most amazing future ahead of me, but I just feel like it is a bit difficult at the age of 31 actually to like be going through this transition period and having to let go of things. It's kind of, yeah, just letting go of what you once knew and just being comfortable in the unknown. I think for me that's not always been easy. It's kind of it's a bit unsettling. So I imagine in the next like 5 years things will start to settle because I imagine I will myself be in a serious relationship. That's what I see for myself. But it's just one of those things, isn't it? Like single amongst loads of people in relationships. It's a funny one.
Well, it is. That's why they make all the rom-coms about it. Like in every rom-com, there is there are the people who are not coupled up. There is the friend who is the bestie who plays the wing person who makes the rom-com hilarious. They're all, like, but, it's not easy. It's like we don't live in a movie, right? So even though it would be fun, actually, that's one of the things I always like when people are thinking about this. Sometimes I will be like, I'm like, if your life was a movie, how do you want it to play out? Like, how do you want this story to be retold of you and your situation right now? And that's especially helpful when I'm talking to parents who are like, what I want to do is scream at my kids. And I'm like, okay, so if this was a movie and we were replaying it, how do you want the story of you fighting with your kids about Rice-A-Roni to be played back?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, how do you want to have been known to show up, right? Like, what does that look like? And yeah, so we're talking about family changes, and I know that there's so many, 30 to 60, that's like your entire ages 30 to 60 is like
That's
your
all
entire
the
motherhood,
family.
and letting them go and doing all those other things. And so there's so many changes that happen that I find amazing. Now, luckily, I only raised one kid full time because I don't know how I would have done with a whole Brady bunch of family members. That would have been a lot of kids for me. But it really took a lot of energy. And what I love empty nesting. And Hannah, you may not have much to say about this, but I know that Amy will.
Oh, I
Empty
have so
nesting
much to say.
and how it changes not just your relationship with, your kids, because you're no longer that full-time mom. We're still moms, but we're not full-time. But how it changed my relationship with my husband because we had all this time. And then right when my kid graduated, or the year that he was graduating, was the pandemic. So then it was like, it was really just us. And we had been the Southwest, so we were away from both of our families. So it really became a little interesting, let's say. There was so many transitions there at one time. And I guess what happened with us is I would love it when he would go away for a weekend to do men's work or whatever. I'm like, you want to be away for a week to see your family? Absolutely. Like,
See ya.
leave me alone. So there's a
Well,
little bit more freedom, and we're not fighting
yeah.
for time like we were.
That is, I mean, not that this is your experience, but that is like statistically, that's the biggest that's where people are getting divorced now. Like the, what do we call it? Silver gray divorce or something is the fastest growing thing, which is basically women and men who have done the job of raising the kids, and then the kids launch and the parents are like, I never want to see you again. I'm moving across the country. Goodbye. Thank you so much. And not that that's what, that's neither here nor there how it is, but I do think that that is one of the most interesting challenges. Because if you're going to live to be 100, right, and your kids move out when you're 55, you're looking at 45 years with that same person, So I am right there with you. The other day, this is a story from this week. I'm not an empty nester yet, but I walked into my house and my husband had spilled coffee on the floor, somehow walked through it and hadn't noticed. And there was a trail. I don't even know how that's possible. I literally don't understand this. And there was a path from the kitchen to his office of coffee colored feet. And I was like, what happened here? And he's like, what are you talking about? I don't know. And I was like, did you spill the coffee? He's like, I don't think so. I was like, oh my God, what? And in the moment, I was like deeply craving. Like I was like, I look forward to a day where the only messes that I will clean up are the ones that I make. And I don't actually look forward to that like that. It's like bless the mess, and I'm happy for my family. Like it's beautiful. But I was just like, seriously, how? Like how? Why is this? How do you not know?
And I understand that because we were living alone for 5 years, and now we moved in with family because aging parents and
Yep.
whatnot. And just like Hannah's been saying, nothing, and you also, like, nothing like being in close relationship with other people and know where your energy is and what's going on, and seeing all of the stuff, seeing that mirror part of us and being like, Christina, what's that judgment about? Can we let that go?
Right.
And, with my husband being in his childhood home, that changes his energy as well. Like he's got a lot more young boy energy in him than he did before, for the better or worse, depending on the day.
So you guys are in his childhood home. That's got to be super fascinating, actually.
Yeah, with about three other full-time people and three other part-time people that come and go. And we're close to his family, so they drop in whenever they want. So it's a lot different life than we had, where, like, we were so secluded. We had some friends wherever we were going, but it was really just us, and he would go away and I'd have alone time. And I mean, we would have friends visit and stuff, but it's a much different setup now. So which is why I was looking at relationship tips and what would I offer people. And the one that came up that I just texted my husband before this was, we have to look at conflict differently, that it's not you against me, it's us against the problem.
Oh yeah.
Right. And I think that so often when we're in an emotional disagreement, we forget that. We forget that we're actually on the same side. It's not you that I'm arguing with or fighting here. We're trying to approach this problem. We're trying to win over this challenge that we're having. That's what we're looking for. And for me, probably because of the way I was raised, it's so easy for me to go into, I want to make this other person wrong, instead of, well, what is the actual problem? And let's get through the emotional stuff so that we can see, what is the actual problem? What do we each want out of it? And how can we best make that happen if it's possible? But I think so often we can see it in the politics in the United States too. It's just like, if you don't believe what I believe, you're absolutely wrong. And it's like, that's why we don't solve anything, because we're constantly fighting each other instead of working with each other. How can we actually, let's, focus on the problem, not on bringing each other down or poking or whatever.
And I just want to say that is one of the best times to bring in a third person to help you through it, because when you're in the bottle, it's very hard to read the label from inside the bottle, right? So like when you're emotionally attached to the problem, I mean, you have a lot of skills, Christina. You've got a lot of talent. You've got a lot of knowledge. For you to work through that with your husband is a lot of work for you. For most people, they're like living through this, feeling like there is no other option. And like a third person, a coach, an advisor, a counselor, right? They're the people who can rubber duck for you, like bounce back to you and be like, hey, this is what I'm hearing, this is what you're doing, and try to redirect you to being problem focused, right? So it's like fighting over who will take out the trash, right? If you harp on it with your partner, like that they're doing it wrong and they need to do it your way, you can have that fight forever and the trash will never get taken out. You have to like actually stop and say, okay, we actually need to talk about how we're going to get the trash out of the house. And I just want to offer compassion and grace for people who don't see it, because I think that when you're in it, it's really hard to see it.
Yeah.
I once had a coaching session with a person, which was an entire hour about potatoes. Like a kid had eaten potatoes that wasn't their share. And it was an entire hour of working on it because she was so hurt by the situation. And when you think about it, it's like, oh, it's just the potatoes. But one of the things she kept saying to me is she's like, I'm so happy that you're not saying it's just the potatoes. And I was like, dude, there are 100 times in my life in the last year that I've been pissed off about things like potatoes. Like I get it that it hurts, right? It doesn't do me any good to tell you it's just the garbage or it's just potatoes or it's just an
stories that she's
invitation.
telling herself about it,
Yeah.
right? It's the stories that she's telling herself, of course, about it,
Right.
what it meant to her and how it must have been intended that way, all that garbage. And I think you were about to say something.
If I forgot. Hannah, weigh in.
No, I was just thinking about all of this, and I think it's like one of the reasons why, not why I'm deliberately single, but it's why I'm very much a stand for being single and not settling for relationships, I suppose. Not that's what I'm getting from what either of you are saying, but I was just thinking about it and I was reflecting because I've decided to dedicate the next 6 months to kind of dating myself. And I think it's one of those things where even though on the one hand I'm looking at all of my friends in these relationships and they're getting married and having kids, like I don't really envy any of that. I'm kind of like, that's cool. Like you've got your own little thing going on, but I just have these big dreams of what I want my relationship to look like. And I'm more than happy to kind of be over here doing my own work. And eventually whoever it's supposed to be will come by. So it's just kind of all of this churning up, just how like relationships can be so much ego and so much drama when the people aren't doing their own work or the people don't know how to do their own work, And I think it just reminds me of how like what the kind of relationship is that I want, right? And it's not to say these sorts of things won't come up, but it's like your ability to heal together, I think, is the most important thing, right? Like how you make up and how you mend.
And I just want to say, like, okay, so when you're a kid, right, everybody has parents. And so your world is just everybody that is parents and kids. But a lot of people, like a lot of people have very, very full, totally enriching lives. And they are not a part of that. And I'd like it's weird because it does become this like very tight circle of kids are a huge amount of work. So like you surround yourself with other people who are going through this monstrous job of raising all these little people who are not good at following directions. But about half of my friend group are people who are child free by choice. Some of them are married, some of them are not. And the number of times that I'm envious of the freedom of my single friends, my single child free friends, I mean, a lot. It's a great life, like I never want to be a person who, who offers that up, that the only path to happiness or the only path to satisfaction and joy is through that one singular relationship or by filling up your house with small versions of yourself.
It absolutely isn't. And Hannah, bravo to you.
Yes.
Because I got married at like 23 and what Dr. Phil would call a starter marriage. It taught me a whole lot. But let me tell you, the paperwork wasn't worth it.
It's an expensive way to learn it.
It's an expensive lesson that way. And after that marriage, I was like so set on on who I wanted as a partner. And my friends were like, oh, you're just a man hater. I'm like, I'm not a man hater. So one night I went home and I wrote down all the requirements. And I was like, if it ain't this, I want nothing to do with it because I'll do better on my own. I'll be okay on my own. This is exactly what I want. If I can't get that, I'm not getting it. And like years later, it was like we were moving in together, me and my current husband, and I found the list and he checked every single one. And I was like, see,
Really?
wasn't being picky. I was just because it wasn't like he's got to be 6'3" with dark hair.
Oh, okay.
Like it was more like, I want somebody who's doing their work. I want somebody who's going to take my son in like as if it's his own child and not because I talked with Amy on her podcast about my step parenting experience and it was challenging at best. And so I knew exactly what I wanted for my son, what I wanted for me. And yeah, and it all came true. So take your time, manifest the thing that you want. It's not worth it in any other way. It's not a happily ever after. It's going to be work. If it's work before, it's going to be work after.
But I love that you clarified how you made that list because I think we've probably all known people who make the list like they're going to the grocery store. Like, this height, this color hair works at this company. Like, and it's like, and that, those things might shift, right? Those things might shift and change. Whereas like the more character-based stuff is key.
Yeah, so Hannah, please take your time, choose the right one. It all comes in your own journey. And absolutely, Amy. I mean, women do not need to be married or attached or have kids. I mean, they can do that in any combination they want to do these days. And so, allowing that to be.
But that's so easy to say, a
I know.
lot harder to do because so what are the words we use? The socialized message that we get about our value as women is still very much that, we are defined by the person who chooses us as a partner. We are defined by their social status in the community. We are defined by how our kids show up. And intellectually, we can know that that's nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really important, I think, for self-actualization and self-growth to understand that we are our own individual people. But I give true weight and honor and, verity to the challenge that is actually living that life. Like, it's like, it's really, really hard to walk that walk because it's like a fire hose of shoulda that has been forced on us for a long time.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a journey to find that, isn't it? And coming out of
so,
that,
yeah.
all the
Yeah.
people
No.
pleasing, all the norms. Like, I think it's definitely changing. I think it's just obviously as a worldwide thing, it's going to be, we've got some progress to make. But I suppose it's an individual thing, isn't it? Like we change ourselves on an individual level, and then it starts to trickle outwards.
And I mean, right. So humanity has been around for however long humanity's been around. I don't even know. I didn't pay enough attention in history class. Like it took a while to get these long-standing things. The idea that it would like be fixed between when I turned 12 and when 50 is probably unrealistic. It's a little piece here and a little piece there. And tying it into the social circle relationships, a piece of this is finding the circle of people who have the same worldview as you, right? So like if you want to lead a life as a feminist, independent, empowered woman, and you find yourself with a social circle of trad wives, you're going to feel a little bit out of sync with that group. Like that's you gotta exit stage left and find your people.
Find your
No
people.
judgment,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, no judgment which one you want,
Right.
but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's just wrap up maybe one piece of wisdom or takeaway and how people can reach out to you. So I guess I just want to reemphasize ask for what we want. I think it's one of the most romantic things somebody could do. I know that we think it's romantic when they just know magically what it is that we need. And let me tell you, you can take so much work out of the relationship if both of you ask for what you want, because then I don't have to guess. I can just do that, and you can just do exactly what I have asked if you're available for that, and we don't have to do the whole guessing game. So that's my wisdom.
So one piece of advice, I think that I'm going to use Hannah as the example, right? Because I think that one of the most powerful things we can do is take the time to allow the noise to ignore the noise and get to know ourselves, right? And she used the word dating herself, but like it's intentionally cutting off the things that are influencing us that may be distractions and creating the space to listen to ourselves so that we can make the list that Christina is talking about, so that we can do the stuff. But it can be hard to know ourselves, and so that sounds lonely and stuff, but it's not. It's the most exciting, amazing thing when it's like, I want a chocolate milkshake. I'm going to go get a chocolate milkshake because I'm listening to myself. It's a really, really powerful thing to do. And I think it can be done. So I'm Amy Stone, a life coach for step parents and adults and blended families. The name of my company, you guys, is Amy Says So, because I'm a little bossy. And that's where I share all of the things that I make and create for people. And I have lots of free stuff there. You can go and get it. And that will tap you in to let me tell you all about the fun things I'm doing.
Thank you, Amy and Hannah. And all the links will be below for these women so that you can connect with them.
Something that I've been reminding myself of quite a lot, when this could be for like personal goals, professional goals, it could be for attracting relationships, it could be for creating something in a relationship. And it's like, who do I need to become to have the things that I want to have? Like what, if I'm wanting to attract, say it's a man who has all of these different qualities, it's like, well, am I embodying these qualities myself? And it's like, well, if I'm not, then how do I expect someone to attract someone of that same type, I suppose. So I think it's always just looking inwards. If we're dissatisfied with what's going on outside in any part of our life, it's like, well, what is it in me that I'm dissatisfied with, or what do I need to change about myself, my views, my worth, whatever it is, to actually have all of those things. So yeah, it's a constant reminder for myself. I've got it on like a little board I look at every day just to kind of bring myself back to that when I lose myself slightly. And yeah, the best way to find me is, I guess you'll have the link to my website in your notes, but yeah,
Sure,
just my website, www.hannahblackburn.com, and all my details are on there.
Awesome. Yeah, all of your information will be below. So go connect with these beautiful women. Thank you for being on today.
Thank you.
And thank you all. Thanks for tuning in. It really means so much to all of us. If you're craving some real connections and you want to have these midlife conversations, join us for our next New Moon Circle. You just go to invitingshift.com/newmoon and join our community. Share, support, be inspired by a group of fabulous women just like you, navigating midlife and growing connections with themselves and others. Want to support our show? The podcast world is so competitive, and your likes, subscribes, and reviews make a huge difference. Seriously, those small little clicks help us reach more amazing women. Be a hero and spread the word. I'll see you next week.